At the clause 10 of the part 1 schedule 2. This is the last clause in the part 1 of second schedule. So this is giving what? This is providing that a practicing chartered accountant shall be deemed to be guilty of professional misconduct if he fails to keep the money of the client. If he fails to keep the money of client. Of whom? Of the client. Other than what? Fee, remuneration, money to be expended. So X, our practicing chartered accountant, P, who is the client of whom? Practicing chartered accountant. So X has rendered auditing services to the client. He will provide what? Audit fee. He has provided some other services in his professional capacity, such as management, consultancy services, etc. So P will give them what? Remuneration. And P has already provided what? Amount, which is required to be paid as advance tax in the next year. Okay, that is the money that is so he has provided what? Audit fee, remuneration, and as well as amount that is to be expended. So if P is providing any other amount or any other money other than these three, it is the responsibility of the chartered accountant. It is the responsibility of the practicing chartered accountant to keep that money in a separate bank account. That is, it is required to keep that money in a separate bank account. That is, if chartered accountant receives any sum other than fee, remuneration or amount to be expended from the client, it is the responsibility of the chartered accountant to use the to keep the money in a separate bank account. Suppose Mr. X fails to do so, then he will be guilty of professional misconduct, that is GPM. Then another one, Mr. P, who is the client of X, has provided some amount that is required to be expended, but Mr. X, that is for the payment of advance tax, but the due date for the payment of advance tax has already elapsed or expired, but X forgot to make the payment of the same. Here X received the money from the client, but X fails to use the money within the reasonable time. So this amount which has been provided by the client for the purpose of its utilization, this is not required to be provided, or this is not required to be deposited in a separate bank account. It has to be used within the reasonable time. But here X fails to use that amount within that reasonable time. He will be deemed to be guilty of professional misconduct. So if X, that is the practicing chartered accountant, receives any sum from the client other than remuneration, fee or money to be expended, it is the responsibility of the practicing chartered accountant to keep that money in a separate bank account. And any amount which has been provided as for the purpose of meeting some expenses, it has to be used within the reasonable time. But if he fails to do the both, that is to keep the money in a separate bank account and use within the reasonable time, he will be deemed to be guilty of professional misconduct. This is provided in what? Clause 10. I will give you another example. Few people having some doubt that money to be expended. Mr. P has provided a rupee of 1 lakh. 1 lakh to X for the purpose of he will be not in there for the 2 years. He had provided 1 lakh for the audit that is to be conducted in the next year, or after not next year, hope for a next year. So it will be more than 12 months. It's a long time. That is such an amount is required to be spent after a long time. So the same has to be kept by the chartered accountant in a separate bank account. That is, he cannot keep the cash with him, which is stated in this clause. This can be provided for the purpose of meeting the transportation expense, accommodation expense, or for what? Food allowance expense, etc. Because in this example, X office is situated in Chennai and P who is the client of X having a company at Bangalore. So X may require to travel at Bangalore. He may require to provide accommodation, etc. Okay, so for that purpose he has advanced 1 lakh rupee to X, which is for the purpose of expense. It is not as what a fee or remuneration. So if the client is providing any amount that is to be expended or spended after a long time, the same has to be separate, kept in a separate bank account. Each client, healthy practice is to open separate bank account for each client. Okay, so this is mainly for the purpose of using the money that has been provided by the client as per the client instruction. If chartered accountant fails to do so, he will be deemed to be guilty of professional misconduct as per clause 10 of part 1 second schedule. Okay.